those aren't the right kind. I told you cha-cha heel, black ones.
Nice girls don't wear cha-cha heels.
Give me those presents. I don't need you to wear those ugly shoes. I told you the kind I wanted. You ruined my Christmas.
Please, God, not on Christmas!
Get off me, you ugly witch.
You devil, come here, you'll pay for this. You devil, God, Davenport, look at your...
Female Trouble is a film that came out in 1974 that's written and directed by John Waters. So Female Trouble was last week's Patron poll winner, and I was actually a little shocked that it won because it was a film that I had never heard up until this point. Obviously, I've heard a lot about John Waters. I know a lot about him as a filmmaker and his approach to filmmaking. And I also know a lot about his film Pink Flamingos that kind of blew up and helped put him on the map. And despite me knowing quite a bit about John Waters and his films, not only have I not heard of this film, but I've actually never seen a John Waters film. I know it's embarrassing to be honest and come out and say that. And John Waters has always been a bit of a blind spot for me, so I was excited as hell to finally get the chance to watch one of his films. But before I really start diving into my thoughts about Female Trouble, I'm going to do a shill for my Patreon. If you would like to support this channel and get some neat perks, feel free to join my Patreon. $1 a month will get you access to these bi-weekly polls that you can then vote on and decide which film I'm going to watch and review next. $5 a month will grant you access to the Discord, where we have Saturday night voice chats and movie nights every now and again, and it's just a blast and one of the better chapters of my life, to be honest with you. But anyways, after watching Female Trouble and experiencing a John Waters film for the very first time, this, I'm going to be honest, this was probably one of the funniest and most hysterical films I've seen in my entire life. I mean, essentially, every scene in this film, from start to finish, is gut-bustingly hilarious, at least for me. And it was almost kind of tiring in a way that made me just exhausted and a bit frustrated because it just takes so much out of you. This film has so much relentless energy to it and so much chaos that it's just a bit of an exhausting movie, despite the fact that it's absolutely hilarious from start to finish. But what I love so much about this film, and I believe just John Waters in general in terms of his appeal, is that this film is a complete rejection of conventional and professional filmmaking. This film, you can tell, every scene has an approach to it that is meant to completely twist what an audience member would expect out of a conventional and professional piece of filmmaking. And the intentional, unconventional, trashy approach to this film is one of the most glorious things I've ever seen. I mean, the sheer absurdity of this film is unlike anything I've ever seen. Everything about this film is absolutely absurd. But at the same time, it's so incredibly intentional and is genuinely creative and oddly satirical. Especially the third act of this film and when certain characters get introduced that kind of represent the exploitative Hollywood elites. I was surprised that this film actually went down this satirical road, despite it being so nonsensical and chaotic. And it just made this film that much more amazing and that much more admirable. And there's actually also a Christmas vibe to this film as well. That's actually why I put it on the poll, because I wanted only holiday-themed films. And there is a holiday vibe to this. I mean, it's only, at least for me, I only got that Christmas feel, for the first 15 or 20 minutes. But I love it when it's there, and it makes it that much more jarring and that much more entertaining and twisted. Arguably one of the funniest scenes in the film, which is even hard to make a claim because there are so many just gut-bustingly hilarious scenes in this film. But one of the funniest scenes in this movie does revolve around a Christmas morning, or what was supposed to be a wholesome family Christmas morning, and what it devolves into is so... It's hard to describe this film with any other words besides absurd and chaotic. But I've seen a clip of that scene like 4 or 5 times on YouTube after already having watched the film, and it just never gets old. I mean, I'm in basically tears every single time I watch it. But yeah, as I mentioned, what makes this film so appealing and so entertaining and so hilariously absurd is that every convention that you would expect out of a normal film is completely out the window and in the garbage. Basically, every scene never ends up where you expect, and it just gets to a point in the movie where you just stop expecting anything out of each scene because it just always goes down some crazy road and some crazy result that is just completely out of your own noggin. And for some reason, in this case, I just really loved that fuck you attitude. And sometimes I'm watching a movie and it just doesn't work. It just comes off pretentious. Where the film is edgy and different for the sake of being edgy and different, and it just doesn't really work. But for some reason, the way it's done here, is just an absolute thrill ride. It is so much fun to watch, and there's never a second of this movie where your eyes are not glued to the screen. And there's so much trashy imagery in this movie that is so disgusting, and it's so disgusting that it's just hilarious. I mean, there's a few close-ups of male genitalia. One close-up of male genitalia, like in the second or third act, that is so over-the-top gross that it's just... the kind of reaction I remember giving that scene is just so memorable, and I'm never going to forget watching scenes like that in the film. But yeah, this film was absolutely filled with different kinds of just trashy situations. I mean, there's a scene where Divine, playing 2 different characters in this film, is being sexually assaulted, or I don't even know how to even interpret that scene. It looks like sexual assault, but I think it was consensual sex, like in the first act of this movie. But she's basically having sex with herself, the character Divine, because the other person that is committing the sexual act on her is played by him, the same person. And it was the most insane shit I've ever seen put to film, and it just had me in tears. And that absurdity alone isn't even the only reason why that scene is hilarious. It goes even further in 2 or 3 different ways that you don't expect, that just keeps provoking a reaction out of you. And the passage of time in this movie is so abrupt. Like 1 second she gives birth to a baby, and literally just through a jump cut, she's already like 8 years old, jump roping in the living room. It's so jarring, but again, it's things like that that make this film feel so odd and so unlike anything you've ever seen. And I also can't remember there being a single cinematic shot in this movie. The vast majority of this movie looks like they picked the angle in like 2.5 seconds. Like, there's not really much thought to each angle. It's just, okay, is the camera ready? Are you recording? Okay, let's go ahead and shoot the scene. Like, there's pretty much nothing to it besides someone picking up a camera and saying action. But again, for some reason, that fuck you attitude to this movie really works for me. And I haven't even talked about the acting yet. The acting is another huge reason why this film is just elevated to a whole other level. Pretty much every actor in every scene is just giving 150%. And it makes it that much more entertaining. The main character, played by Divine, she is just insane in this film. Again, it's just like every single scene in the movie, she's giving all of her soul and all of her mental strength and all of her physical strength and just all that devotion to every scene. And it's just so respectable. And what's interesting about it is that I read that this film is completely scripted. There's times where you think that they're just kind of making it up as they go, but they're not. This film is completely scripted, and these actors had to memorize these lines. And that does kind of make sense because this film is filled with so many quotable moments. Even though, again, as I said, some of it seems off the cuff, there's definitely an emphasis on wordplay and just insults that are always going to stick with you just because of not only the line delivery from these actors, but just the nature of the writing of it. But yeah, Divine in this film is Absolutely incredible. Honestly, very talented person. She is just electric on screen. Like, so much energy, so much charisma, just so much entertainment value. And it's because of her acting style and the devotion that she gives to every single scene. And as I mentioned earlier in this review, there is a satirical angle to this film. I mean, arguably, all of it is satire. But specifically, there is this clearly satirical element in this film that has to do with the exploitation of lower class citizens. And to me, it definitely seemed like it was criticizing, again, like these elite figures that would create these entertainment mediums that are kind of akin to something like Jerry Springer, even though I know that Jerry Springer didn't exist back then. But just as a form of comparison, it is kind of criticizing these rich figures that instead of doing anything to really help lower class citizens, they do the exact opposite and are exploiting them for money and for views. And these elite figures that do this are responsible for further exacerbating the situation and creating these dangerous monsters of society. And then when they are in the hot seat, they just play the victim and act like they're completely innocent of the situation. And it's that kind of expression and message that instantly made me think of one of my favorite System of a Down lyrics, which is, "You should have never trusted Hollywood." But either way, I really love this film. This is hands down one of the most hysterical films I've ever seen in my entire life. There's so much rewatch value to this. It's unlike anything that I personally ever seen. All the actors, especially Divine, is just giving it their all. They're giving it their heart and soul. And I love that John Waters knew what he was doing from start to finish. And we get such a breathtaking and gut-busting hilarious product that I can't wait to own on Criterion. But as I did mention, it is perhaps maybe a bit too much, to the point where I am just exhausted. It does hit a point where I'm like, okay, I don't know how much more of this shtick I can take. And that's like, maybe like at the end, maybe the last 15 or 20 minutes of the film where I'm just like, I just can't, I don't know if I can do this anymore. So I'm going to give Female Trouble a solid 9 out of 10.
I got lots of problems.
It could change to a 10 out of 10 upon rewatch. I don't know. Right now, I'm kind of having a reservation on it, but this definitely does have the potential for me to consider it as masterpiece status. But either way, that's all I got to say about Female Trouble. If you really enjoyed what I had to say about the film, please give it a thumbs up and share it amongst your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to be updated on more film-related content.